Hi everyone, it's Katie from Rosie Reads, and I am here for another episode of Rosie Reads. And this week we are focusing on space, in particular the moon. So today our book is Margaret and the Moon, How Margaret Hamilton Saved the First Lunar Landing. And it is by Dean Robbins, and it was illustrated by Lucy Nisley, and it was published in 2017. And this is actually a biography. So what's a biography? A biography is a book about someone who lived or is still living, and it's a true story. So everything in this book actually happened. How cool is that? Margaret was one of the first female computer scientists in the 1950s and 1960s, so about 60 years ago. And we're going to learn all kinds of cool things about what she did. And as we always do, I want you to do two things while we're reading the book. The first thing is you'll probably need to grab a pencil and a piece of paper, like always, and write down some cool facts about the moon. We're going to learn quite a few, and I want you to be able to tell two people after we read the story. And the second thing I want you to do is think about how Margaret solves problems. How does she do it all the way through her life, and how does that help her when she has to help the mission to the moon? So let's get started. Margaret and the Moon. Margaret Hamilton loved to solve problems. She came up with ideas no one had ever thought of before. Why were there only daddy long legs? Margaret had a solution. She would call some of them mommy long legs too. Sounds good, right? Why didn't girls play baseball? Margaret had a solution. She would join the team herself. Why didn't more girls grow up to be doctors or scientists or anything else they wanted? Margaret had a solution. She would study hard in every subject at school. Reading, music, art, and especially mathematics. She learned as much as she could about addition and subtraction, multiplication, and division. Margaret's father was a poet and a philosopher who talked to her about the universe. She asked about how the planets moved, when the galaxies formed, why the stars shone. She gazed at the night sky in wonder. You can see all the constellations. And constellations are pictures people have made up of the stars. How many miles to the moon? 238,855. How many miles does it travel around the Earth? 1,423,000. How fast does it go? 2,288 miles per hour. How big around is it? 6,783 miles. Margaret began solving harder and harder math problems. It was fun working her way through the steps. She liked moving around X's and Y's in algebra. She liked measuring circles and triangles in geometry. She liked studying curves in calculus. And then she discovered computers. Margaret could use this new invention to answer so many questions about the universe. She experimented with writing instructions or code that told the machine what to do. The code was called software, and Margaret called herself a software engineer. She started with something simple, asking the computer to add and subtract, multiply, and divide. Margaret taught herself to write code that performed more and more complicated tasks. She programmed computers to track airplanes through the clouds, and even to predict the weather. She made them do things they had never done before. In 1964, so almost 60 years ago, Margaret got interested in an exciting project for NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Their scientists were working on the hardest problem humans had ever tried to solve: flying people to the moon. Could Margaret use computers to get the astronauts 238,855 miles there and 238,855 miles back? She convinced NASA's leaders to let her try. Margaret thought of everything that could happen on a trip to the moon. Would the spacecraft go off course? Would it lose power? Would an astronaut make a mistake? Margaret wrote code to tell the computers how to solve these problems. She worked her way through the steps just as she used to do in math class. Soon, Margaret became director of software programming for NASA's Project Apollo, leading dozens of scientists. And look, she's the only girl. She helped Apollo 8 orbit the moon 10 times. She helped Apollo 9 connect 2 ships in space. She helped Apollo 10 get within 9 miles of the moon's surface. Hello there. With Apollo 11, NASA would finally try to put people on the moon. Had Margaret thought of everything that could go wrong with a lunar landing? She checked her code again to make sure. The astronauts were depending on her, and this is Margaret's code on pieces of paper. And look how tall it is. It's taller than her. And that illustration is after a real photograph. You can look it up online. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff! Apollo 11 rose with a blast of smoke and fire. Margaret followed along from a control room, and the whole world watched on television. For 4 days, the spacecraft drew near to the moon. The lunar module, named the Eagle, split off to make the landing. Yippee, says the module. But with minutes left to go, an astronaut entered a command and the master alarm buzzed. Whoops, he says. The Eagle's computer started performing too many tasks. Overload, overload, yikes! The control room panicked. The moon landing was in danger. Everyone looked at Margaret. Had she prepared for this problem? Of course. Margaret's code made the computer ignore the extra tasks and focus on the landing. It brought the Eagle closer to the moon's surface. Closer, closer, touchdown! The Eagle has landed, announced astronaut Neil Armstrong. The control room cheered. Margaret was a hero. Later that night, the Eagle's hatch opened. Margaret held her breath. Armstrong took the first step on the moon. The whole world celebrated in front of their televisions. Hooray, hooray! Margaret walked outside smiling. Her code had helped the astronauts get to the moon, and she knew it would help to get them home safely. As always, she gazed at the night sky in wonder. The end. So remember, I asked you to do 2 things while we were reading. Write down some really cool facts about the moon, and we heard a lot about how big it is and how far away from Earth it is. And also to think about how Margaret solved problems and how she did it all while she was in school and later in life when she was working in different jobs with computers, and how she eventually used it to make sure the lunar module could land on the moon. And the other really cool thing to think about is that Margaret Hamilton is actually still alive, and she's done all kinds of really amazing things. So go ahead and Google her with your parents or your sisters or your brothers, whoever you're staying at home with right now, and learn about all the really cool things she did. She actually was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom for her work on the Apollo missions. And as always, with your parents' permission, get online and tell us what you found out about Margaret, or tell us some of the moon facts that you learned today, or how Margaret solved problems and eventually saved the Apollo 11's landing on the moon. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you later this week for Rosie Makes when we investigate the phases of the moon. Bye!